At Thanksgiving dinner, my stepmother said, "Here's to my husband's son who will die poor and alone." My father nodded. "I'm cutting you from the will." My stepsister laughed. "He's so broke, he probably stole gas money to get here." The whole thing felt wrong from the moment I pulled up. Lorraine's car was already there, which was weird because she's always the last to arrive, making some grand entrance. I walked in and she was sitting at the table scrolling through her phone, not even in the kitchen like usual. She looked up, said, "Oh, you made it," without smiling, then went right back to her screen. I noticed she'd set out the fancy crystal glasses, the ones she only uses when she's trying to impress someone. But there were only 5 on the table, not 6. Lorraine is obsessive about even numbers, says odd numbers give her anxiety. So that was clue number 1 that I wasn't really part of this dinner. Dad was in his recliner, TV on mute, looking exhausted. He's 71 but looks about 90 now. The Alzheimer's diagnosis came 14 months ago, and some days he's sharp as ever. Other days he calls me Thomas, which was his brother's name. He stood up when he saw me, gave me a real hug, but then immediately sat back down like it took all his energy. "How you doing, Dad?" I asked. He just nodded, eyes on Lorraine like he was waiting for permission to speak. Even their dog Winston was hiding in the bedroom, which he never does. That dog loves everyone. Rosie showed up 20 minutes late wearing this ridiculous designer jacket she bought to celebrate her promotion, which I'm pretty sure was a lateral move. She's been exaggerating. She immediately launched into stories about her new condo, how expensive parking is downtown, not once asking me a single question, just talking at me while Lorraine kept checking her phone. We sat down, and Lorraine put me at the far end of the table, furthest from Dad. She's never done that before. I'm usually right next to him. She poured herself a very full glass of wine, then Rosie did the same. Dad barely touched his food, just moved it around his plate. At one point, I asked Dad about his medication schedule, just making sure he was taking everything on time. Lorraine cut me off immediately. "I've got it covered, Brent. This is my house. I think I can handle it." Her house. Right. The house Dad bought in 1987, 30 years before he even met her. There was this glass pie dish just sitting on the counter the whole time, untouched. Lorraine kept glancing at it, but wouldn't move it, like she was waiting for some kind of signal. Finally, she stood up, raised her glass, and said she wanted to make a toast. Rosie was grinning. Dad just stared blankly at his plate. "Here's to family," Lorraine started, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "and to those who know how to stick together through everything." Then she turned and looked directly at me. "And here's to my husband's son who, let's be honest, will probably die poor and alone." She said it like it was a joke, but nobody was laughing except Rosie, who absolutely lost it like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. And Dad, my own father, just nodded and said completely flat, "I'm cutting you from the will." He said it like he'd been rehearsing, like someone had fed him the line. Rosie jumped in. "He's so broke he probably stole gas money just to get here." I just sat there, hands shaking under the table, staring at the 3 of them. Dad wouldn't even look at me. Lorraine pretended to be sympathetic and said, "Well, at least you got a free meal out of it." I should have expected this. They'd been pushing me out for months, but never this openly, never this cruel. Then I started smiling, really smiling, because I realized this was exactly the moment I'd been preparing for. I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, and slid it across the table to Lorraine. "You should probably read this," I said calmly, "since you're so worried about the will." Rosie tried to grab it, but I pulled it back, handed it directly to Lorraine. She opened it, started reading, and her face went completely white. "Speaking of wills," I said, "Dad already signed everything to me last year, when he was still clear-headed. Alzheimer's, remember?" Rosie exploded. "You're lying. There's no way Dad would—" "Everything's legal," I interrupted. "Notarized, witnessed. He asked me to handle things after his diagnosis. You can call my lawyer if you want to argue about it." Lorraine slammed her wine glass down so hard it splashed everywhere. "I'm not letting you get away with this." Dad just stared at his plate, confused. Rosie lunged at me, tried to grab the papers. I stood up, grabbed my coat. "Maybe you should have thought about this before toasting to my failure," I said. I walked out. Rosie tried to block the door, screaming. I pushed past her. Lorraine yelled that she was calling the cops. "Go ahead," I said. "Everything's legal, and you know it." The next morning, I started the transfers. Bank accounts, property deeds, investment portfolios. Locked them all down. 2 weeks later, they had exactly 0. Lorraine texted, "You're going to regret this." I replied, "Check your bank app."